Lisbon, Portugal. Frederico, late 20s, walks down a dark alley. There is a garden in the distance. Frederico looks at the bright white sky, which gradually turns a clear blue. Then, heavy clouds rush across.
It is said, regarding painting, that the artist's truth lies in the sky they see. William Turner, Edvard Munch, Van Gogh.
The path is covered in wet surfaces that shine in the light. Frederico continues on the path with a closed umbrella. He steps into a puddle which reflects an unlikely pattern of colors. Finally, his face is revealed, albeit distorted by the water.
Federico Feo, pleasure to meet you. At least, from my perspective. You probably don't know this, where I come from. Feo literally means ugly. Once you're given a name at birth, you bear it for life. Although my mother couldn't have known it beforehand, it was a fair name.
Inside of a hospital maternity ward, it's daytime. We now flash back to Lisbon, December 31st, 1979. The time is 11:59 and 1 second. A woman is giving birth on a hospital bed, writhing in pain. In bursts a doctor.
Oh my goodness, what is going
on? A young and inexperienced nurse tries to assist, but she's more of a hindrance, continuously handing the doctor the wrong instruments. The doctor does what he can with his blood-splattered hands and prepares to deliver the newborn. But just as the head crowns, the nurse turns pale and faints.
Nurse! Oh my goodness! Nurse!
The doctor leaves the woman alone to tend to the unconscious nurse. As the woman struggles to push, the doctor frantically calls for help.
Doctor, I need some help in here!
But no one comes.
Please come help me!
He runs out of the room in search of assistance. The woman is anxious, but she continues pushing. She bends forward and makes one last effort.
I was hideous. Some babies are born that way, but my grotesqueness wasn't just a result of being squeezed through my mother's tunnel of pain. It was authentic.
The pregnant woman finally gives birth and pulls the baby toward herself with her own hands. Exhausted, she looks at the baby and drops her head back.
I had a feeble gaze. My nose was enormous, and a fine black fuzz sprouted from the top of my head and continued down my back to my buttocks. If I survived, it was thanks to that inexplicable and divine attribute possessed by mothers: maternal love.
The woman catches her breath and looks at the baby, clearly enamored. She strokes him gently.
However, the most tragic part of my existence was not merely my own repulsiveness. Nature had refined a cruelty so exquisite that it could only exist in the shadow of its worst creation. Its best creation.
Finally, someone arrives to assist the nurse. The woman feels another surge of pain and grips the baby with one hand while gripping the metal bars of her bed with the other. She strains and groans, while finally the doctor turns his attention back to her. The fainted nurse regains her senses and exits the room.
Breathe.
The woman contorts and strains again. A second baby is born.
My brother.
The doctor and newly arrived nurse smile. They wrap and prepare the baby while delighting in its sweetness. They hand it over to the exhausted but happy mother, now holding two babies.
Round, smooth, rosy, beautiful. These little hands, these delicate feet. My brother, he was a work of art, worthy of contemplation.
Inside a photo studio, daytime. We flash back to the year 1988.
Federico Feo, Francisco Feo.
Federico and Francisco are posing in a cheesy photo studio with a Roman column and a purple-toned sky backdrop.
Very good, boys.
The boys are dressed as sailors.
Handsome boys.
The camera flashes.
If my name sounded a tasteless joke, in my brother's case, the paradox only enhanced his already evident qualities.
Federico is the grumpy child type, with a dull and unpleasant face. Startled by the flash, Federico covers his face with his hands. Meanwhile, Francisco smiles like an angel.
Handsome boys.
He is the perfect child, with a sweet face, friendly smile, and always eager to please. Federico storms off in a bad mood. Francisco runs after him. The old photographer, nearly a corpse, fumbles for his glasses on the side table.
The only physical evidence of my monstrosity was a photo taken by an octogenarian photographer who, given his condition, did not refuse to immortalize such a mistake of humanity.
The photographer, still unable to find his glasses, cheerfully continues to give instructions and snap photos, completely oblivious to the fact that the boys have left. We're now inside of a living room. It's evening, the same year. Federico's mother, Maria Antonia, hammers a nail into the wall. It's a simple middle-class house. Many bookshelves, many books next to an armchair. Maria Antonia is an energized, cultured, and good-humored woman. She is committed to staying true to her modest roots. Federico sulks at the dinner table with a hood pulled over his head, a plate of unfinished broccoli in front of him. Francisco tries to humor him, mimicking the weightlifter's stance on the TV. Federico completely disregards him and plops his forehead on the table. Mother stops hammering, gets off her stool, and turns off the TV.
This is brain poison.
Francisco runs over to his brother, reaches for his plate, and checks if the mother is looking. Federico lifts his head slightly, and Francisco winks at him. Federico's face remains unrevealed. Federico notices the hanging frame with the photo taken in the studio. A reflection on the glass hides Federico's face in the picture.
As was my custom, I enforced my will with ruthless disobedience and had it declared photo non grata.
Federico stands up in a fit of rage, flailing his arms and tearing the frame off the wall. His mother and Francisco stare at him in shock as he hurls the frame at the TV. The TV crashes to the ground, taking the mother-of-pearl flower vase and the tablecloth with it. Federico's mother glares at him with anger, but her expression slowly shifts as Francisco watches from the corner with amusement, choosing not to interfere. Federico freezes. The mother calmly walks over to the TV, never taking her eyes off of Federico, and places the broken glass TV back on the table. She turns it on. Nothing happens. With slow movements, she places the napkin and vase back on the table and faces Federico with a half smile and a look of victory. As the mother leaves the room, Francisco quickly wraps the remaining broccoli in a napkin and tucks it into his pocket. When the mother returns, she notices the empty plate and raises her eyebrows, looking at the boys. She then takes the plate into the kitchen. Outside of a church at dawn the same year, seated on the stone staircase, Federico and Francisco bump fists as they place a bet. They're silhouetted against the bright sunlight as Francisco flips a coin. Federico's face remains unrevealed.
We were two sides of one coin. The everything and the nothing.
The coin spins in slow motion in front of what is now the church. A dramatic sky looms in the background.
The angel and the devil incarnate. The most tragic and divine comedy.
The coin lands in Francisco's hand, with heads facing up. He He celebrates while Federico looks on with a disappointed expression, head hanging low.
If God does exist, he most certainly has a sense of humor, and he'll have personified it on our creation.
Francisco puts his arm around his brother and gives him the coin. Another bet, another fist bump. This time it's Federico who spins the coin up in the air. As he goes to catch it, Federico lets it slip, and the coin falls on the step, bouncing down the stairs until it lands, crown side up, on a sewer grate. It wobbles and then falls into the drain. Inside an auditorium, daytime. Back to the present. A century-old university auditorium, crowded with people. In front, a musty-looking old professor gives a speech in Italian and shows slides of Greek statues using an overhead projector.
From the ancient Greek...
At the back of the auditorium is Federico, who looks older than his classmates. He works on a pocket-sized 3D puzzle. Federico is the quiet type, but at this age, he reveals intelligence and charisma that immediately endears him to others. His unkempt beard, his hair falling over his forehead, enormous glasses, and hood on his head completely camouflage his features. Suddenly, Federico is hit square on the head with a piece of chalk. Several heads turn, and the professor looks at Federico with the same expression of his mother, eyebrows raised.
Cappuccino!
Federico removes his hood and chuckles to himself. A nearby classmate joins in with a friendly laugh. Federico shrugs, as if to indicate it was a friendly act. Meanwhile, the lecture continues as Federico turns his attention again back to the pocket-sized puzzle. Inside of an apartment building, it's daytime, the same year. Federico enters the building and looks at the mailbox. He quickly parks his bike and opens the box to find a letter. Federico takes it out, clearly happy, and bounds up the stairs, taking 2 steps at a time. Federico enters his apartment and puts his keys on the side table, opens the letter as he takes off his coat. It's handwritten. He reads it with a smile and sits down. The apartment is unusually minimalistic, not like a regular student's place, but more like someone who doesn't appreciate objects. On the table, there's a large, unfinished 3D puzzle of the Colosseum in Rome. As he sets the letter down, his wrist reveals a tattoo of a spiral and a number, 1.618. Beside him, the letter he's reading is signed with 1.618. He pulls a pamphlet from the envelope and examines it. There's a post-it note attached that reads, "Mom pulled some strings." It's the next day. Federico stands outside the lecture hall, inside the university building. He greets 1 or 2 classmates soberly as they arrive. Federico spots the professor walking toward the door amongst the students. He removes his hood, and his friendly classmate from before laughs again. He puts his hands in his pockets and notices he still has the pamphlet from the letter. The professor enters the hall, followed by the students. Federico looks at the pamphlet, now standing alone at the door. He puts his hood back on and walks away, holding the pamphlet in his hand. The year is 1988. We're inside Federico and Francisco's bedroom. Federico lays on his bed with his eyes closed, his hair covering his face, a sliding puzzle in his hand, and as usual, a hood pulled up over his head. Francisco sits on the floor, sketching a ninja turtle from a sticker book. On his side of the room, the walls are decorated with posters of cartoons and identical pencil sketches of them. On Federico's side, there are hardly any objects. Federico opens one eye, checks the progress of the puzzle, closes his eye again, and solves the puzzle blindly.
Our family excursions always allowed me to draw several important conclusions. First, that on the 7th day, the Lord was able to rest.
Boys?
Francisco looks up. Federico is completely absent, doesn't react. Francisco touches his brother's shoulder. and leaves, skipping with some sticker book under his arm. Federico lets out a sigh and rolls out of bed.
But not us.